I never thought an ordinary Christmas evening would carve itself into my memory like a scar. The living room smelled of cinnamon and pine, candles flickered against the frosted windows, and my mother's laughter filled the air as she dug through the old wooden trunk at the corner of the room. "Lisa, you should show him," she said, her hands pulling out the thick leather-bound album she always kept hidden away. Dust rose in the air as she placed it on the coffee table with a heavy thud. I smiled at Daniel, my fiancé, who was sitting beside me. His arm was draped over the couch, casual and warm, but his eyes looked a little uneasy. Maybe it was just the thought of meeting my extended family for the first time. Or maybe it was the endless attention my mother had poured on him since he walked in the door. "Go on," she encouraged, sliding the album toward me. "These photos go back generations. Your father and I always meant to pass it down to you someday." I opened the cover, the smell of old paper and faint mildew rushing out. The first pages were harmless enough. Sepia-toned photographs of my grandparents' wedding, a few childhood snapshots of my mother, blurry images of summer picnics. Daniel leaned closer, his hand brushing against mine as he looked. "Cute," he whispered, smiling at a picture of me as a toddler with cake smeared across my cheeks. But then a few pages later something changed. His smile faltered. His body tensed. His hand froze on the corner of the page. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice soft enough that only he could hear. He didn't answer. His gaze was locked on a black and white photograph of a family gathered in front of an old farmhouse. The picture wasn't unusual, at least not to me. But to him it was as if the world had tilted. "Lisa," he said finally, his tone low and trembling. He reached out, then pulled his hand back as though the photo might burn him. Slowly he closed the album shut, pressing his palm firmly against the cover. My mother looked over, puzzled. "Oh, don't stop. There are so many more." Daniel shook his head. His voice was barely a whisper when he leaned close to me. "This photo, it shouldn't have been taken." I froze. "What do you mean?" He didn't look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on the closed album, his jaw tight. I could feel his pulse racing through the hand he held against mine. "Daniel," I pressed, trying to keep my voice steady, "you're scaring me. What did you see?" His lips parted as if to speak, but he hesitated. Then, almost too softly for me to catch, he whispered, "She's not supposed to be there." The room seemed to shrink around me. My mother hummed happily as she rearranged ornaments on the tree, completely unaware of the chill creeping down my spine. I stared at the album, my heart pounding. I wanted to open it again to see what had shaken him so badly, but something in his eyes stopped me. "Lisa," he said finally, his voice low, "promise me you won't look at it again." And that was when I knew, whatever Daniel had seen in that photograph, it wasn't something ordinary. But how could a picture, just paper and ink, carry such fear? The rest of that Christmas evening passed in a haze. My mother kept pouring wine, retelling old family stories, but my thoughts were glued to Daniel's strange reaction. His voice, low, urgent, almost broken, kept replaying in my head, "She's not supposed to be there." I tried to act normal, to laugh at my uncle's bad jokes and answer my aunt's questions about wedding plans, but every time I looked at Daniel I saw it. That tension in his shoulders, the way his hand trembled when he reached for his glass, the hollow stare in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. When we finally drove back to his apartment that night, the silence between us was unbearable. The streets were empty, Christmas lights glowing faintly against the snow, but inside the car the air felt heavier than stone. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Daniel," I said quietly, my hands clenching in my lap, "please tell me what you saw in that photo." His grip on the steering wheel tightened. For a long moment I thought he wouldn't answer at all. But then, without looking at me, he muttered, "It's not possible." My heart skipped. "What's not possible?" He swallowed hard, his knuckles white. "The woman in that photo, she's dead. She's been dead for years. I was there when..." He cut himself off, shaking his head. "It can't be her." I turned toward him, my pulse quickening. "What are you talking about? That was just some old family picture. Maybe you're mistaken." But he shook his head violently, his voice firm now, almost desperate. "No. I know her face. I'll never forget it." The car slowed as he pulled into his driveway. Snow crunched under the tires, and for a moment I thought he might tell me everything. But instead he killed the engine, sat in silence, and let his head fall against the steering wheel. Daniel, I whispered, touching his arm. Please. You're scaring me. He finally turned to me then, and what I saw in his eyes chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just fear, it was guilt. Lisa, he said carefully, you need to stay away from that album. Don't ask your mother about it, don't open it again. Promise me. I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but his expression silenced me. So I nodded, even though inside I was burning with questions. That night, long after he had fallen asleep, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept circling back to the farmhouse photo. I tried to remember the faces, the details, but all I could recall was a blur. It hadn't looked strange to me at the time, but clearly Daniel had seen something I had missed. Who was that woman? And how could Daniel, who had grown up hundreds of miles away from my family, know her? The next morning, as Daniel showered, I slipped into the living room and grabbed my phone. My hands shook as I typed out a message to my mother. Can you send me a picture of the farmhouse photo from the album? The one on the page Daniel closed. I hesitated for a moment before pressing send. Guilt gnawed at me. I had promised Daniel. But I needed to see it again. I needed to understand. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a reply. A single image. The farmhouse. The family lined up in front. And there, in the far right corner, partially in shadow, was a woman I had never noticed before. Her eyes seemed to stare straight through the camera. Unblinking. Almost knowing. My breath caught in my throat. Because now I understood Daniel's fear. The woman was not from my family. And I had seen her before too. Not in a photo. Not in a story. But in my dreams that I stared at the photo on my phone until the screen dimmed. My reflection looked pale, almost ghostly against the glow. The woman's face haunted me. Sharp cheekbones, a hollow expression, dark hair pulled back tightly. There was something both familiar and unsettling about her. When Daniel came out of the shower, I quickly locked my phone and slid it under the pillow. He looked tired, older somehow, as though the weight of last night had aged him in a matter of hours. You didn't look at it again, did you? He asked suddenly, towel draped around his shoulders. His eyes searched mine, probing for the truth. I forced a smile. No. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He kissed the top of my head before disappearing into the kitchen, and I exhaled a shaky breath. Because the truth was, I couldn't stop seeing her, not just in the photo but everywhere. That day, as I went through errands, flashes of her face appeared in storefront windows, in the glass of the bus stop, even in the rearview mirror of my car. At first, I thought it was paranoia, my imagination feeding off fear. But then came the dream. That night, I found myself standing in front of the same farmhouse from the photo. Snow covered the ground, the wind howled, and yet the air was thick and suffocating. I saw my family standing there, smiling stiffly at the invisible photographer. But on the edge, exactly where she had stood in the picture, the woman waited. Her eyes met mine directly. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Her voice was low, brittle, like branches snapping in the cold. I tried to move, to run, but my feet sank into the snow as though it were quicksand. She stepped closer. Her lips barely moved, but I heard the words as clearly as if she had whispered them into my ear. Lisa, you don't know who he really is. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. Daniel jolted upright, grabbing my shoulders. Lisa, what happened? I shook my head, unable to tell him. I didn't want him to know I had seen her too. Not like that, not in a dream so vivid it felt like memory. For the next few days I pretended everything was fine. I laughed at Daniel's jokes, helped him plan our wedding seating chart, and forced myself to focus on work. But each night when I closed my eyes, she was there. Always in the same place. Always with the same words. One evening I couldn't take it anymore. While Daniel was out running errands, I pulled out the photo again and zoomed in on her face. My pulse raced as I studied every detail. That was when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Around her neck was a pendant. Small, oval, with a dark stone at the center. My stomach dropped. Because I had seen that pendant before. Not in a dream, not in a story, but in real life. 2 weeks earlier I had found it. In Daniel's drawer. I remembered holding it in my palm, thinking it was an old keepsake or perhaps a family heirloom. He had snatched it from me quickly, muttering that it was just something he picked up years ago. I hadn't thought twice about it then. But now I couldn't ignore it. Why would Daniel have the exact same pendant worn by a woman he claimed was dead? And why did she know my name in my dreams? I didn't want to believe it, but the dread building in my chest was undeniable. Daniel was hiding something. And whatever it was tied to her. I couldn't shake it. That pendant had become an anchor in my mind, pulling me deeper into questions I wasn't ready to answer. Each time I looked at Daniel, I imagined the cold weight of the necklace in his drawer, and the woman's eyes in the photograph staring back at me with quiet accusation. For days I debated confronting him. I rehearsed sentences in my head. Why do you have her pendant? Or, who was she really? But every time I tried to speak, Daniel's warmth disarmed me. He'd cook me dinner, kiss my forehead, tell me he couldn't wait to marry me, and I'd lose my nerve. Still, the dreams grew worse. The woman never moved from her spot by the farmhouse, but each night her whispers grew louder, clearer. Lisa, don't trust him. Don't trust what he tells you. One night she said something that nearly stopped my heart. He killed me. I woke gasping for air, my throat raw from a scream I hadn't realized left me. The next morning I made a decision. I had to know the truth. While Daniel was at work, I went back to his apartment. My hands trembled as I opened the drawer where I had seen the pendant. At first it was empty. Panic shot through me. Had he moved it? But then, tucked beneath some papers, I found it again. The chain was tangled, the stone at the center dull but unmistakable. I lifted it into the light, and for a second I swear it pulsed, like a heartbeat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Startled, I nearly dropped the pendant. It was a message from my mother. Lisa, are you okay? I've been thinking. I don't remember that woman in the photo. I don't remember her being part of our family at all. A chill slid down my spine. My mother had spent her entire life documenting every birthday, every graduation, every wedding. If even she didn't recognize the woman, then who had she been? I snapped a picture of the pendant and sent it to her. Does this look familiar? Minutes ticked by. Then her reply came. Yes. Your grandfather had a story about it. He said it belonged to a woman who disappeared. But Lisa, that was before I was even born. Why do you have it? Before I could respond, the front door opened. Daniel was home early. I shoved the pendant back into the drawer, my heart hammering. He walked in, smiling, carrying groceries. But something in his eyes seemed sharper now, almost as if he sensed what I'd been doing. We ate dinner in silence. He kept watching me, his gaze heavy, until I finally excused myself and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands shook as I scrolled back to the farmhouse photo, zooming in on the pendant again, comparing it to the one I'd just touched. They were identical. There was no denying it anymore. The woman in the photo wasn't just some stranger. She was tied to Daniel. That night I dreamt again. But this time it wasn't the farmhouse. It was Daniel's face. He stood in the dark, holding the pendant, blood on his hands. And behind him, the woman whispered my name. When I woke, Daniel was watching me from the other side of the bed. His eyes were open, calm, unblinking. You've been dreaming about her, haven't you? He asked softly. My blood ran cold, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. You've been dreaming about her, haven't you? I froze under the covers, my throat tight. The darkness of the room seemed to close in around us, and though the heating hummed softly, I felt an icy chill crawl up my spine. I tried to play dumb. What are you talking about? But Daniel smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides more than it reveals. Lisa, I know. I see it in your eyes every morning. You've seen her. You've heard her. My heart pounded. Daniel, who is she? For a long time he didn't answer. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling as if gathering the courage to peel back layers of his past. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, fragile, almost broken. Her name was Evelyn. He paused, the name trembling in the air between us. I knew her years ago. Long before I met you. I held my breath. She wasn't supposed to be in that photo because she died the night it was taken. The room tilted. My breath caught. What do you mean she died that night? He sat up, running a hand through his hair. It was a winter party at that farmhouse. I was young, stupid. Evelyn and we were together, but things went wrong. There was a fight. She fell. His voice cracked. I tried to save her, but by the time I got help, it was too late. Everyone thought it was an accident. But Daniel, I whispered, if she died that night, how is she in the picture? His eyes met mine, hollow, desperate. That's the part one can't explain. When the photo was developed, she was there. Standing on the edge, watching us. The same way she's watching us now. A lump rose in my throat. The pendant. The dreams. The whispers. Everything clicked into a terrifying puzzle. She's not gone, Lisa. She never left me. His hands shook as he reached for mine. She won't leave me alone. And now, she's found you. I yanked my hand back, fear surging like electricity through my veins. Why me? Why am I seeing her? Daniel's gaze darkened. Because you're marrying me. And she doesn't want that. The air thickened. My chest ached with every breath. I thought of her eyes in the photo, her voice in my dreams, her pendant lying hidden in Daniel's drawer. Evelyn wasn't just a ghost of his past. She was a shadow wrapped around his soul. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every flicker of headlights outside, I imagined her face staring at me. When I finally drifted into restless dreams, Evelyn was there again, closer than ever. She leaned toward me, her voice like frost. Leave him, Lisa. Or you'll end up like me. I woke with tears on my cheeks. Daniel was asleep beside me, but his hand clutched the pillow where my phone was hidden, as if he knew I had been searching, digging. I realized then that my future wasn't just a choice between staying or leaving. It was survival. Because Evelyn wasn't going to stop. And Daniel, whether guilty or haunted, wasn't free of her. Neither was I. The photograph sat in my phone gallery, her face etched forever into pixels and ink. Some nights I think about deleting it, pretending none of this happened. But I can't. Because every time I close my eyes, she's there. Watching. Waiting. Whispering my name. And deep down I know the truth. The photo should never have been taken. But now it can never be erased.